Saudi Aramco held the IPO record for 6 years, leveraging $20 trillion in oil reserves. SpaceX just shattered that momentum, raising $75 billion in a single morning. This capital influx arrived despite a massive structural deficit. The core rocket division is currently posting annual operating losses of $3 billion. Page 312 of the 400-page IPO filing contains the projection that reconciles these losses with the company's massive valuation. It focuses on a singular, aggressive cost reduction target. The financial model assumes SpaceX will drive the cost of orbital delivery down to exactly $200 per kilogram. Reaching this threshold allows the company to move past the niche market of satellite launches and begin constructing a global utility. If they miss it, the $2 trillion valuation has no mathematical floor to stand on. The IPO bets on 3 pillars: heavy lift rockets, XAI, and Starlink. Rockets lose $3 billion annually, and XAI burns $6.4 billion. Starlink is the lifeblood, generating a 63% margin, funding these long-term projects without returning to private credit. This internal subsidy system exists to solve a resource bottleneck that is currently reaching a breaking point on the ground. By 2026, the world will generate an estimated 221 zettabytes of data. Processing this volume requires a physical footprint of server racks that our current power grids were never designed to handle. A single large AI data center draws as much electricity as 100,000 households, contributing to the 40% rise in U.S. electricity prices since 2021. Beyond power, these facilities require 5,000 to 9,000 gallons of fresh water every day to cool a single megawatt of capacity. In regions already facing drought, data centers are competing directly with local populations for drinking water. The industry is facing a reality where data needs to grow 10 times over, but the physical inputs of land, water, and power are becoming the world's scarcest assets. Terrestrial alternatives like subsea data centers solve the cooling problem, but still rely on land-based energy. Moving compute into orbit allows for direct access to unfiltered solar power, 40% more effective than anything on the ground. This transition introduces a massive thermodynamic obstacle. While space is cold, it is also a vacuum, a perfect insulator. Without air to carry heat away, a satellite functions like a thermos, trapping all the thermal energy generated by its processors. On Earth, heat escapes by riding on air or water molecules. In a vacuum, there are no molecules to pass the energy to, leaving the heat with nowhere to go. The International Space Station demonstrates the only workaround. It uses massive physical radiator panels to dump heat back into the void. Scaling this to the megawatt levels needed for AI is a massive weight penalty. A single megawatt data center would require a 100-ton radiator just to prevent the system from melting. The growth of artificial intelligence transitioned from a software optimization problem to a heavy lift logistics problem. At the current Falcon 9 price of $2,700 per kilogram, launching a 100-ton radiator is too expensive to compete with terrestrial server farms. Starship is designed for full and rapid reusability. By catching the booster midair and refueling like an airplane, SpaceX slashes the recurring cost of a flight down to just the fuel. If the cost per kilogram reaches $200, launching massive radiator systems becomes more affordable than paying for electricity and water on Earth. This specific price point is what links all 3 business pillars. It makes XAI's orbital data centers viable, allows Starlink to serve as their data backbone, and creates the massive infrastructure demand that justifies a $2 trillion valuation. This valuation relies on a $28 trillion addressable market, yet the hardware required to deploy radiators and servers at this scale is still in the experimental phase. The unusual IPO structure, which allocated 20% of shares to retail investors, raises questions about why institutional demand wasn't higher for such a massive offering. Any disruption to Starlink's profit margins, through competition from Amazon or government-backed constellations, threatens the capital pool required to finish the Starship project. SpaceX is attempting to build a closed-loop infrastructure monopoly, owning the utilities, power, cooling, and transport that the next decade of AI requires to survive. The success of this historic IPO depends on one variable. When you watch the next Starship launch, ignore the spectacle. The math that determines if this is a revolutionary asset or a historic bubble comes down entirely to reaching $200 per kilogram.